I'm looking for a motion on the minutes.
I won't approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item, review any new available testing data.
Okay, so the state informed superintendents, assistant superintendents at their last meeting in Concord that the state report card will be out sometime in mid to late December. So we don't have any comparison data right now until probably January. It's the same thing they pulled last year on us.
Wow.
For testing that took place last April and May.
Right, yeah, that's incredible, you know, that's.
The state does have the comparables that we talked about last time, so it has on their website from the DOE, it has the results by district in a giant spreadsheet. It's not alphabetized. So you have to dig through the data, but it has no comparison as to, let's say, District A and how District A did against what the state's average was in, let's say, reading or mathematics in grade 3. There's nothing yet.
So there's nothing in iReport or whatever.
Correct. That's where they would put it. They would put it in the iReady. Yes, that's where the report card would go. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing in there yet. It's still from last year's data.
And they're not even projecting till the end of.
That's what they were told is mid to late December. So I'm guessing probably sometime prior to the Christmas break, they will release that.
Just
Probably like-
before, so they can't get any.
Correct.
questions.
I would say around December 22nd at 4 p.m.
Not that I'm assuming at all.
It seems like a bad sign if they are putting it off till, like Jamie says, like, is it, how bad is it gonna be? How bad do they think it's gonna be, I wonder?
They haven't given us any indications from any of my meetings at the CIA level. Have they given you any?
CIA is curriculum, instruction, and assessment, by the way.
Yes. I love it. So fancy.
I get to go to the Super Troopers in Christine's lingo. So, no, I don't know. All I've seen is, you know, the usual news document or article about national test scores in mathematics being incredibly low. And I think you shared one with me, and I saw another one a few days ago. I should have sent that to you. I didn't think of it. Yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if it's not good.
Well, the raw data from the file you sent us last time.
Yeah.
No, it was not good at all. I looked at that extensively.
And I'll just say anecdotally that in my meetings with the teachers, so I started doing the fall meetings that we wanted to do with teachers, Diana and I. And the 4th grade teachers are reporting that now the 4th grade is really the nexus. So they were the kids that really kind of missed 1st and 2nd grade or 2nd and 3rd grade. They are really struggling. There's a lot of needs behaviorally and academically. We actually finally filled the extra special education teacher that I wanted to hire last spring. We filled it. They're starting Monday. That's the position that the board approved. And I'm so happy that it's going to those teachers right now. They desperately need it. It's just a lot. So I think that we're seeing it, the uptick in behavior is almost always congruent with the academic issues, right? I mean, it's hard to be engaged in school when you're not learning. So they're working hard on it, but I think it'll be interesting when it comes out.
So in the absence of that, what other measurements are we using to assess our own progress?
Okay, so for our district assessments, we do use NEWA for the same type of measurement minus science. So we use NEWA for the reading, writing, language for the younger kiddos, as well as mathematics. And we use that K-12.
And that's acronyms are hard for them sometimes. They don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, the Northwest Educational Assessment is the test. You know
That one I am familiar with.
Yes, it's very common. Exeter uses the same assessment tool. It's something that the district has used, I believe, for the past 12 years. and counting, so we have
Yeah.
quite a bit of data on that. And it's something that if you would like, we can do a large NEWA presentation.
Yeah, that'd be great. Good
I
for people to
mean,
know.
we don't have anything from the state, so I think we
Yeah.
better, yeah, we better.
We
start
can
corralling our
definitely do
own.
that. We'll be testing students again in January.
Mhm.
So we'll be
And
doing
do
a-
we test them in the fall?
We do test them in the fall, yes. So students were tested in late September, early October. We have to allow for so many weeks of instruction prior to testing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
that
we
would be
could,
good.
do data, we could give a fall presentation, or we could do a fall to winter presentation, whichever you guys would prefer.
I'd like to see the ball.
Okay.
Could you do that at our next meeting?
I could absolutely do that at our next meeting.
I think it would be good for us to also have a conversation about our autism canal scores.
Yes,
But let,
well, yeah.
yeah, but let's.
Well, I
not-
have it's actually perfect timing because I have several reading specialists and our ELA coordinator coming to the December meeting
Perfect.
to talk about some piloting programs, especially K-5 for literacy. So it'd be a perfect time to include some of that information.
Would an hour be enough, or are we gonna need a little more time? Because I could talk about giving up, I could ask the personnel committee if they would give up the half hour preceding so that we had enough time to really have a robust meeting. I mean, if we're gonna talk about NWA data, literacy data and literacy pilots, we might need a little more than 1 hour. It's just a thought.
Correct. I would say the pilot will probably take at least an hour because we're going to do quite a nice demonstration for them. I would just need to ask the teachers because they have children at home. So I would need to make sure that they could arrange for childcare.
Yeah, sure. I
Can we
think
get any information about the programs that we have ahead of time?
Oh, yes. This is for you to kind of recruit ahead of time for a pilot.
But she's asking if they can look at things before.
Yeah,
the
will we
meeting.
get, will you at least, like, send us like the names of the programs they're looking
Yes,
or
of
something,
course.
just so that we kind of have it all, you know.
Yeah, and you've seen the
We
budget.
usually like to try and do a little homework prior. to,
Yeah.
So that we can have
Mhm.
that
Right.
robust conversation.
We can absolutely do that.
Okay, so NEWA data, literacy data, and a literacy pilot. I'm just writing down as I hear items for our next meeting. Okay, thank you. Anything else on that one before we move on? Okay. K-2 grading system work.
Okay, so the first meeting is going to take place in January, as we discussed last time. Jamie graciously will be joining that committee group, and there will be representation from each grade level, along with a special education teacher and a building administrator, as well as myself. And yes, and Troy, as Troy's pointing to himself, yes. The special ed director will be part of that meeting, yes. So we can look at some of the current language within the report card for K2 and what that looks like. The type of descriptors that are being currently used, compare that to other districts, not only in New Hampshire, but what are other schools doing in New England when they're communicating a student's progress at a primary grade level. What does that look like for families? Because a lot of what's done in New Hampshire is competency-based, so I'm trying to go outside our radius a little bit to see what other areas, other states are doing, because we're all like New England areas. So what's Massachusetts doing? What are, districts in Maine using in regards to how parents are looking at a report card and how that information is being communicated to those families? It's really the language used, I think, that needs to be looked at. And is it, something that we're communicating effectively so a parent knows their child's an emerging reader and what that actually means? So a parent can understand this, I know where my child's at, I know where their strengths are, and then I know how to support them at home.
All right.
So speaking of communication and grade, it was just mentioned to me that the website's not up to date. So SAU.org, and I went in and checked, and I searched grading, and it just comes up with the old information.
Oh, really?
Grading.
Oh, yeah.
If you go to the curriculum page, it actually does have the the manuals, the
Jim,
middle
can you
school
send-
manual
send
and the high
her and I
school
the link of
manual.
Where you went there, 'cause there might be
Yes.
2 spots that we.
Yeah,
don't
So
like
we
that-
can just have tech upload it
Just
to the
whatever
other
is,
spot.
when I searched, it just went to the search button and put in grading,
Okay.
it came to all the old data
Oh,
sets.
okay.
I'll do that again and I'll get the links and then I'll forward you. the
Perfect,
links.
thank you. Because Dan has linked it to the curriculum page on the district site. But we can make sure that it's there.
Yeah, just because when a parent goes in, they like to do what I did and just did search for grading and then I'll go along.
No, thank you for letting us know. It's probably just an oversight when he was deleting other areas. I definitely want that done before the ask. Which is why I had him change my webpage first and foremost, because it was some of the older grading practices through the past 3 years. And then I wanted to make sure it was updated so the visiting team could look at what we have and it was accurate, so they could ask the best questions.
What are they doing then?
They are coming Monday, the 28th of November, and Tuesday, the 29th.
Right after Thanksgiving.
Yes, big fun.
First day of Boston.
That's why I was looking at her about having the NEWA data conversation in December, because I know what's going on for the next 2 weeks.
And I met with the visiting chair today. So I went through the schedule with him and spoke to him about some of the things he's going to see. We went through some of the reports that Jen as well as Bob were part of last year in the self-reflection committee. So a lot of good conversations this morning, and we'll take a sigh of relief when that's done. For sure. Well, at least part 2 is done. I shouldn't say it's done, but
Yeah.
part 2 of that is done.
It's 2024 that it's finished, right?
The 24, correct. So they will be meeting with the board for the decennial visit in December of 2024. So what's going to happen is they'll be coming the 28th and 29th with the visiting team. There's 9 people, all from various schools in New England, most in New Hampshire, actually, some even very local as Timberlake, coming to view each of the buildings. They'll be in the buildings all day Monday, meeting with parents, meeting with students, meeting with teachers, observing classrooms. And then they have set meetings with special educators, administrators, et cetera, even librarians, nurses. It's a very packed 2 days. And then from there, they write a report. And they focus on the different areas that I spoke to last year around student learning, facilities, et cetera. And then from there, they're going to create what are we doing really well, and then some areas that we need to focus on before we get our accreditation. So whatever, and I've seen pages because I've gone on visits, some are 10 pages long of things that we need to fix before our decennial visit for our accreditation. So we'll need to create a plan in order to make sure that those items are accomplished and that we have evidence to do so before the December, I think it's December 4th of 2024.
So our hope is that it will line up with the strategic plan. That's why we were so careful that the 2 things should be, we can't do 2, this is such a huge process. You know, we think that the curriculum alignment piece, the grade reporting, all the things that we're doing are the things that we need to do.
Correct. Well, the strategic plan was organized because of the way that NEAS was.
Right.
So they dovetail nicely off of each other. So as we're accomplishing tasks for NEAS, we're also going to be accomplishing those same tasks for the strategic plan.
That's what.
Okay. Anything else on the food control system framework? So we will have some more information in January. Okay,
I would, yes, be better. Let's hope that.
okay, at least an update, some, at least about an update. Okay. Status of conversion to 24 credit diploma. We hope, did Heidi come or?
She actually couldn't be here. I thought she
Okay.
was coming, so sorry for that.
But we had a pre-meeting, so she has seen what we're
Okay.
about to talk about.
So really, in my understanding, there was, prior to me joining the district, there was a committee that worked really hard on putting together, the new diploma requirements, with the 3 different types of diploma, all 24 credits, the standard diploma with honors and diploma with distinction. And so then there are pretty extensive notes about the committee's recommendations for what each should look like. So, and I don't know if at this point, how recent people have been able to put their eyes on that, on those notes, or if we need maybe an opportunity for a refresher, and maybe really take some time to think about what direction we want to do sooner than later, and then make that decision. I'm not sure if, the decision is something to do this minute right now, or if people need sort of time to go through again and digest. So for example, for the diploma with honors, students would have to meet, a minimum GPA of 3.5. And then there's like a menu item of different things that students would have to do in addition to that, anywhere from, New Hampshire Scholars Program of Study, acceptance into a accredited post-secondary 4-year or 2-year college or career, or into apprenticeship. So it had like a big menu of additional components. And then the diploma with distinction included, and again, this was just recommendations from this committee, the defense of learning. So as part of a student earning that, they would need to sort of do a culminating project that they would, at the end of their 4-year career, if that was the diploma path they knew they wanted to take, have the opportunity to present their learning. It reminds me of years ago for AP English, which they don't do anymore. We used to have to do this very extensive like research project on our choosing, and it really was an ELO at the time, so we weren't calling them that, but and then present it to a board of teachers. I believe there was a school board member when I had to do mine years ago. So it was a pretty extensive process, and it really was the culminating grade in that particular class. So I sort of see it as that, except for not a particular class, but just to earn this diploma. And it would be pretty extensive, not just a willy-nilly. I think we'd have to really think about it. But it does really relate to, the graduate success profile of the graduate. And it's sort of like a seminar is what it was sort of listed in as here, that they would start their junior year, but they would have to commit to that. But we could even think of starting it earlier, or at least make sure that we're aligned to preparing kids to be able to take on that kind of a project by the time they graduate. So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jamie. No, I was just gonna say, so I think everything has been sort of outlined and laid out. It's just a matter of now, I think it sort of stayed in limbo, and I'm happy to continue on with Heidi and, Matt Malilla too, if we need to get the group back together to make sure that, this is the direction, or if we need to think of anything else, or if there's something missing. I don't want to miss anything in this. I don't want to do something and then say, oh no, that's, we didn't think about this. I want to make sure we sort of have a really good detailed plan, and then we have to think of implementation, right? Because if it's something that's going to involve a kid doing a project, what does that mean in the rollout, and what do we do in the meantime, and that sort of thing.
I was on the committee.
Mhm.
And my recollection is we did come to the board and we did agree to 24 credit diploma. We did not get consensus on a diploma with distinction. There were some robust discussions. I would say the majority was in line with what you just outlined, but some of us were the minority that had some issues with that. So for example, some of the points that were made is, what's a defensive learning? Well, it demonstrates what you know. Well, how do your grades not demonstrate what you learned? And why isn't it just a GPA cutoff? And some of the answers back were, well, it's not fair to use GPA because we know recently kids that didn't get a distinction, or they wouldn't get a distinction under that program because they didn't have good enough grades. But we all like those kids, and we all think they should get the distinction. And I mean, one of the points was a theoretical. A diploma with distinction, by definition, separates. Everybody doesn't get a diploma with distinction, else it's not a diploma with distinction. It's just a diploma. So there's a lot of discussion back and forth on that. As I recollect, there was gonna be a second team to go in and teachers and try to define something of what they really mean by defensive learning to try to convince the skeptics in the group, of which I was one.
I was also.
Yeah. As to what exactly is that about? And then when one of the first things came up, we were gonna call, one of the first proposals, and it was a straw man, so take that into account, was a diploma with distinction would start at 2.5 grade point. And we're like, wait a minute, that's not a distinction, that's, you can't have that.
Right.
And it was like, well, it's a straw man, just to start discussions.
Yeah.
Right.
It was there, the consensus, in my opinion, was there was no consensus.
That's kind of what I
The
heard.
majority
And-
thought that there was not consensus, I did.
So, in the end, it kind of, there was a survey that got put out at the end was basically, do we think it's worth continuing these conversations or don't we? And I don't really know where that ended up coming out.
Okay.
I kind of feel like it kind of.
That's kind of my understanding of it. Walking in as a
Well,
newbie.
Right.
I know that
Mine too.
So,
Mr. Ambrose and myself had some discussions about that, and I was very concerned because some of the people left the meeting saying, this is what we're gonna work on this summer, is figuring out this, diploma with distinction. And I had said to the superintendent, that's not what we agreed in the
Right.
strategic plan we're working on this summer. What we're working on this summer is curriculum and getting the grades right, not what we're
Right,
doing with the.
right.
And so I think that's how it kind of got put on the shelf, because one is there wasn't consensus, and two was there were higher priority
Right,
items
capacity.
than that.
Yes.
And so I do think it's worth rediscussing, because I do think as a school district, it would be nice to have a diploma with distinction. But I don't think we have consensus as to what the definition
Right,
of that
and
is.
I think there was still a majority, the majority consensus, I think, still felt like it should be not quite as attainable as it was before, but almost as attainable as it was before, which in my opinion, there was no distinction.
Right.
I mean, my daughter got a diploma with distinction, but she didn't actually start trying until like the end of her junior year. You know what I mean? There were other kids that busted their butts all 4 years and really deserved that distinction. And when you saw how many kids stood up, I mean, it's awesome to see a ton of kids stand up at the graduation saying they have a diploma with distinction. But if it's really not distinction, does it really hold that much weight? And do those kids that really work so hard, does it water down what they earn? Like, I guess that's my feeling on it, is making sure that those kids that really work hard, and it doesn't have to be the kids that take all AP and honors in college, to be those kids that are excelled in the vocations as well.
And that's the
making
thing we're trying to
sure-
figure out right
and
there.
That's what we're, and
That's
that's
the-
where we kind of got, it got really messy and muddy, was in that area of making sure that we have, because we have to, I think, find different ways to figure out distinction depending on which track you're on.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of where,
That was one of the issues. And
That
then
was-
one of the teachers brought up the disconnect to the point you're making, they made that point of, look at how many people stand up with diploma of distinction in New Hampshire scholars. 60% of the class is standing up. Only 30% are proficient in math.
Right.
How can that be a distinction if they can't do basic math?
And I
Yeah.
think, you know.
So I mean, these are some of the
Yeah,
areas
the
that
things
we never resolved.
Well, and I think too now, we've also, since the last conversation about this has happened, we've made some other pretty monumental changes.
Yeah.
That may
Design grading.
completely take out some of the thoughts that were initially here, because it's a different system and a different structure. So in the old model, I can see how a defensive learning would maybe be the go-to because of the old model and how it was, and the old, you know, the grading and reporting manual and how all that was, but it's completely changed. So I think we're now at a point because of the changes, and we're also seeing now, if you look at that grading and reporting manual, it's also encouraging academic habits, right, that haven't been around for a while. So I think too, we have to kind of come back to the drawing board, I would say, and because of the big changes that have happened.
Makes sense to me.
you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable being like, oh yeah, they did that 2 years ago, let's just do that. So, but I also want to make sure we, you know, we have a good place to start with that work that was done. So I know the committee worked really, really hard on that. So I wouldn't want to also just say we're not, you know, I think we need to look at, okay, where were we? And now that we have the new things in place, what does it have to really look like? So. just my thought.
So I think that reconvening the group ASAP is important because we've got seniors this year.
Yeah.
They need to know what they're gonna do, so we've got to deal with this before mid-January, really, by end of January. We've got to figure it out. Jen, can you take the lead on this? I think, I sincerely can't ask Christine to do anymore. She's doing a fantastic job, but the NEASC visit, once that's over, her capacity will shift a little bit, but then there's gonna be the work of doing
Right.
whatever it is that they bring up. And,
She's very saddened by this.
oh, I know. She's doing great.
Thank God.
She's hanging, it's her first year. I mean, she's doing great. Jen, I wonder, and I'd be happy to just chat with you about some ideas that I had, but I wonder if one way to work around the vocational component, because sometimes we have different types of kids in vocational programs, right? There are some kids that are very academically driven, ones that take the nursing program or other, even automotives. There might be a student that just really wants to fix cars. There's a whole, I mean, electricity. I keep asking them to add an electricity program, but what if you went to an electrical engineering? Because it's not just electricity, it's not just wiring. There's a whole other career right above that. So I don't want to, I just wondered if maybe we should talk about some kind of you have to have 3 out of 5 criteria. And that gives the student some room to kind of move, right? And like, just hearing the conversation, I would offer that we could talk more and with the committee of teachers about the opportunity to have one of those 3 be high SAT scores. That's important, right? Or a high GPA in academically rigorous courses. Is there a possibility that if you earn a certificate to be certified in a trade, that would count toward one of the 3 out of 5? I don't know what they all would be. I'm just saying if we wanted to groove for those kids that are, we can't have a diploma with distinction for these kids and those kids. And if you go to vocational, it's totally different, I don't think. I think it needs to be a balance, but I do think Jamie has a really good point. If you don't have strong grades, it's not distinction. And so I'm not trying to water that down. I'm just trying to figure out how to meet in the middle.
Well, one of the
And recognize
questions we
kids.
had is, I mean, if you're in woodworking and you're a shoddy woodworker, it's pretty apparent, and one would presume it's reflected in the grades.
Right.
And if you're doing extremely well and you can make joins and you can do things that most people can't do, that ought to be reflected in the grades. So
Right.
there ought to be a way to recognize excellence in the vocations, just as there is in the more college-oriented courses.
Mhm. And then that's another question is, I'm not saying that we couldn't have a vocational diploma with distinction and then an academic diploma with distinction and have a couple of different options. I don't know what to do, but I just want to throw out ideas that let's just keep our minds wide open to all the possibilities. And if we focus on the kids and what we want to recognize them for, we can't fail, right? If we always focus on, I always think like, what would I want if it's my son? When I'm in a difficult situation about a student, I always ask myself, if this was my child and I was the parent, what would I do? What would I want done for my child? So that just puts it here instead of like in my head. But I also don't want my kid to get a diploma with distinction for not doing high level work, right? I don't, if you want it, show us you got it,
All right.
earn it.
Get the
Because
It's
that
rigor.
gets kids ready for life. It's rigor.
So I will get on then reconvening the committee. Maybe I'll just see who's on it before, and if they're the same group is interested, we'll start there.
And we can give the teaching staff a stipend.
Okay,
And you figure out how many hours and whatnot. I'll work that out.
okay.
Matt's not here, so I can say that.
Yeah, and I think carve out a day that would work for that group and whatnot. I'll get on that. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
curriculum, curriculum review cycle.
Okay. I have colored copies. I have some of them too. I'll just pass it on down the line. Thank you kindly. Chair. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a two-pager. Little two-pager. Could not fit on one page, or
Yeah.
writing would be teeny tiny.
And it is a little, even with my glasses.
Yeah, it's a little. I can happily share the curriculum cycle document with you, but I know that you probably, most of you wanted to see something on paper first. I go, sure, I'm sorry, I tried to get this big as I could. Without having to use an 11 by 7.
For the massive thousands that were still online.
Thank you very much.
So as you can see here, what I did is, I tried to focus on where we've been, which was from last year, and then where we're headed from this school year and beyond. And you can see that there's a phase, so there's like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then also phase 4. Included in phase 1, we're really identifying what are the program goals? What are the state and national standards and the competencies around that to make sure it aligns to whatever we're going to be using, whether that be something like a math program, let's say. And then from there, it's creating guidelines and the rubrics for the curriculum resource selection process, which they have some at like a state and national level of how you actually choose programs. And we would use that to choose a program, let's say for K-5 literacy. And then we would be looking at to present the resources and recommendations for EISA for pilot approval, and that would all be in phase 1. So looking at this school year, and I can explain why these things are on here and not some of the others. So looking at early literacy K2 and ELA 3.5. Looking at some of our data and some of our observations that are taking place, we absolutely at this time need to have and adopt some sort of program for literacy K-5, including but not limited to phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, early reading comprehension, all of those pieces. So looking at what that would mean, what that would entail, but I want to make sure that we follow a very set review process for those types of programs. I've included for this school year as well, personal finance literacy. That is because of the RSA that came out over the summer. We need to make sure that we either offer a full course at the high school level for personal finance literacy, or it is included in one of 2 places. One place being part of an economics course at the high school that has a whole unit dedicated to personal finance literacy, or part of a wellness course. Districts are doing several options with that, yes.
When we say personal, if I read the RSA. when we
That's
say
okay.
Personal financial literacy. That could mean so many different things. What specifically are they getting at? I mean, you're not trying to teach people how to invest in stock markets. I mean, what is it
Well,
really getting at?
so there's part of that to understand what a stock market is. From what they've put out, and of course, the state, God bless, is vague. So they're looking really at credit card. What does that mean? You take out a credit card and you charge this, and what the rate is to be charging for said credit card. I wish I had this in school when I was younger. Most of us kind of learned that the hard way. So it's really around how to manage your finances, your personal finances, when you're no longer in your parents' home, and what that means to have a rate, what it means to have a credit score, and how my credit score then determines the type of car loan or the rate of car loan or the rate of a mortgage that I can have. And then having students understand the direct correlation of having, being credit responsible, and then how much money I save over time in a loan if my loan is 4% versus if my loan is like 7.8%, and what that actually means. It is looking and understanding basics of the stock market. So they might have a small mini unit around, okay, we're going to pretend to invest. We're going to, research what would be a good stock, and then we're going to see how much money you make or lose. So they would understand just the basics of the stock market, and going from there, everything from, you know, balancing accounts and making sure you pay your bills on time. That's basic stuff to more along the lines of when you have, you know, an IRA, or when you're trying to do a 403B, or all of those pieces that most of us in this room have kind of learned over time, they're going to be armed with before they leave high school.
Which I love this. When I was a guidance counselor,
I love this too.
yeah, I developed a unit for middle school guidance for 8th grade, where you chose a career and researched all aspects of the career. The history of the career, the finances of the career, what type of house could you afford for that money in the area that you wanted to live? What would your mortgage be? What's the amortization? It really lines right up with my personal belief that practical application of the skills of reading, writing, and mathematics. So the kids would write up everything and then they would share it with each other. So then you'd learn about 20 careers. My favorite one was to be a BMX bike rider, because it's what I wanted to do as a kid. And this kid chose it. And after doing the unit, he's like, I don't want to live like that. When he saw the income and the lifestyle, and then you be on the road all the time, like once he saw the whole picture, the kid was like, I don't want that. It was really cool, right? And then I was like, just keep riding your bike. Don't worry about it, you know, because he loved it. But it was cool for him to think about, you know, a professional skateboarder sounds all cool until you find out what they actually make, like the sponsored national, not Tony Hawk professional skateboarders. They can barely make a living. And so the kids just, another one figured out that the science component for hairstyling was incredible. The chemicals, the mixing, the colors, like they hadn't thought of the science part of being in that career. And then they noticed how much they made and they got really inspired. So I do think it's important for us to figure this out, and this model of requiring it for everyone, I think is wonderful as long as it has the right academic depth and it's.
Well, I think 2 points to make, we need to be careful. One is, this could go off the rails quick.
Yeah.
So you really need to define what it is you're looking for.
Well, they already have, so that's good.
And 2 is, get the proper financial community disclaimers at the front of every class.
Yeah.
Because people sit there and you tell them the stock market works this way, the stock market works that way. They go and invest the savings bond that grandma gave me into the stocks, and everything's gone because they don't really understand it, because nobody can really tell them how the market's gonna go.
Right.
And then they sue. So any financial course I've ever taught, or any financial course that I've ever been to, there's always a disclaimers up front, and there's standard disclaimers to make sure that everybody understands that this is theoretical and that you should seek certified financial planner or guidance before going and doing anything in the marketplace. You just foods for thought.
So do you think we could include that as a course syllabus?
Yeah, I think right up front, you have to, you just have to.
That's a great point,
let them
Gene.
know, because you don't want
And in the
people
program
coming
itself,
out, and
it's gonna be
parents, it goes nuts too.
Yes.
If there's a perception that you are teaching people the proper way to go invest your money, because the answer is going to be, if you teachers knew how to properly invest your money, you'd be financial advisors and rich stockbrokers, you wouldn't be teachers.
Yeah.
So I mean, the same thing goes to even certified financial planners, that, you know, they can tell you what to do. They're not liable for what you do. So you follow their advice, you lose a lot of money, that's not on them.
Right.
That's your money loss.
You know, and I think some districts I know that have a course, have the business teachers teach it, to have a little bit more, you know, net around people who will, you know, they're certified to teach business courses. So at least they have a little bit more sense, you know.
Not likely to trip over it.
Correct. So,
And the state's allowing any of those. The state is also allowing an actual set course that all students have to take, or a district can elect to add it onto, a unit onto an already existing course, just for financial reasons.
I mean, theoretically, I'm fine with the process. I can perceive some of the pitfalls. You just want to be careful of.
So, yes.
And it's funny, we talked about this when we were talking about changing the diploma and all this stuff. This came up, this was a big topic in the group that I was in, and because Kelly Alley was in my group, we talked a lot about this, the importance of this. And we had even talked about, is there a way to do it during the advisory advisory, but there's a set curriculum and we bring in speakers to talk to the kids during the advisory. And that way it's not, doesn't necessarily have to be added to a curriculum. It could be something that's done in advisory. With the speakers, you have a set curriculum, you have a set schedule on how it's done, but that way you can kind of get that in during the time they're already getting there. So that was something.
And that'll be a lot easier to talk about when we get to the point where we have a standard track and an honors track. Because kids are trying to do honors work during the FLT, and that's something that we need to address.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a big part of the next year, what we're working on.
Advisory helps you also when you're just advising them how these things work as opposed to instructing them to go do something.
Yeah, it's,
Right. So, but that was kind of something she, you know, kind of came up with it. She thought that would be a great place. to have that.
So moving on to the next one, which is social studies 912, also an RSA issue with the civics exam. So making sure that before they graduate high school, that all students, in order to receive the diploma, whichever diploma it is, they actually have to pass the civics exam. So we need to really look at very closely to make sure that we have everything aligned. And Donna Harvey's been amazing at doing this, very instrumental in her work thus far. But we want to make sure our I's are dotted and T's are crossed, that we have this included as part of the program of studies. It becomes part of the course syllabus, and then our communication to families when the test actually begins to count.
I just wanted to mention, Donna's not here, but you could convey to her, Jen, that she has done a phenomenal job with this.
She
She
absolutely has.
has, I think, was it 100% of her students passed?
I want to say, and.
Very
we had
close to 100% of the students
Yeah.
passed.
And the way she embedded it into her day-to-day was very impressive. Sort of starting every class
Yes.
off with a concept on the board around what the questions asked. So, and it really helped her kids learn the study skills too, so. Very.
And she was able to take the test and she broke the test apart in very small increments and taught it accordingly, so every kid was ready.
So I have a further question on that. So this is social studies 9 to 12. And we're specifically talking about civics because the RSA changed. What about the rest of the program? Is that
So-
included in what you're considering? Or
Yes,
I don't see anything
correct.
else?
So I included it this year because of the RSA.
But it's all inclusive?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Correct. And you will also see social studies 6-8, because that is the first place they really have a true social studies experience beyond some basic things in elementary about the state of New Hampshire, basic geography, etc. So I want to make sure that we have something aligned 6-12, and that students are exposed to everything from ancient history all the way up to 2022.
And so then I'll direct this to the superintendent. This would tie into the comment that I made when we purchased $125,000 worth of books, that we were lacking in books about the founding and about the principles of the founding, structure of our government. This would tie right into that, because in my opinion, people don't understand how the government works today, the participation in it, why it's important, what it means, how it works. Those fundamentals, and I'm not being just specific to us.
No,
No,
those
you are-
fundamentals
yeah.
don't we agree.
Out there
Yes.
in the marketplace of education, and they need to be.
Yep.
And that-
we need to make sure we're covering.
Correct, and that to me directly ties into what the civic exam is asking of students.
We're finally coming out of we're getting some work done this year, right? I mean, we're still having major staffing issues, but we're able to still get some work done, right? Like it feels more normal already. We're getting one step closer to doing the things that we want to get done.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that this wasn't just, well, we're gonna put the civics thing on it, and then we're done, and not review the rest of the program.
No,
No,
social studies is near and dear to my heart, so.
yeah, no, we agree that, I agree, I'll speak for myself, that the civics component and the government component of public education needs to be beefed up dramatically. We just haven't been able to get to it yet, but we agree with you. Or I agree.
And then the last one for this year is science for 6-8, really looking at the type of science curriculum that we have, and piggybacking that off of the next gen science standards, which are national science standards, looking at that we're spiraling to make sure we cover all the different areas of science every single year in order to prepare for the NHSAS science test, but also to prepare them to take high school courses in biology, chemistry, physics, etc. So really looking at what's currently being used, what materials do we have, do we want to purchase and pilot a actual set textbook, a set type of curriculum, it's not curriculum, but a set program around science at the middle level, and then eventually looking at what would that look like 3-5 at Memorial, how could we expose them to get them excited and ready, and then how does that then trickle into what they do at the high school level.
And I'm glad you framed it that way. We didn't originally start looking at the math program in some ways as the interconnectivity.
Yeah.
And we really need to be looking at the curriculum, speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir, as it were. We're really
Okay.
looking at the curriculum, and the elementary school is to prepare you to be capable of excelling in the middle school.
Right.
And the middle school is to give you the foundation so you can excel in the high school. And the high school is to give you the foundation for post-high school life, be it in the work world, be it going to academics, be it going to the military, being an
Trade schools.
entrepreneur, building, whatever it is, your high school is your foundation for all that. And these things have to flow. So I'm glad that you framed it.
Thank you.
the way you framed it.
We're trying to recognize that everybody else, they're all linked. We're all linked in a chain. And then if we're just focusing and strengthening one chain, everything else is falling apart. So it's having those discussions across buildings, across content levels, even looking at some of our programs that you're going to, that I'll share with you, and then also that you're able to review in December, which I love, they have nonfiction components to them. So there's social studies and science built into the reading units, which are wonderful. And then there's, I mean, everything from nonfiction pieces and excerpts to poems, to having them exposed to different pieces around that. So yes, we're really looking, I'm trying to be very cognizant of when we're reviewing and piloting and purchasing, because it takes a lot of time and energy for a lot of people, that we're doing it so there's continuity K-12.
Great, thank you.
So that's for this year, and then you'll see moving forward, the 23-24, et cetera. 24-25 is focusing on unified arts. You'll see the world language, health, library, social studies is on there, K-5. I included that purposefully because that fall we have our decennial visit for NIASC, so we need something a little bit lighter. And then you'll notice the 23-24 year, I have science K-5 because science 6-8 will be something a little more set in stone. Then you have science 9-12. Again, that way all science is kind of connected to one another. And then looking at ELA 6-8 and ELA 9-12, what does our program of studies look like? What does it look like in an 11th grade English class? What does it look like in an 8th grade English class? What books are we reading? Are we looking at the literary canon and looking at the greatest books or the recommended books that every student should read by the time they leave high school? Those types of things, those types of conversations.
And the hobbits in there somewhere.
Yes, the Hobbit, yes,
Well,
Tolkien.
I was just going to say, I do, my doctoral dissertation is on the teaching of reading at the high school level. So I'm interviewing teachers and doing a lot of work on that myself. So I'll probably be involved in the 9-12 curriculum conversation and work with them on that, in addition to Christine, because if I've already done all the interviews, I mean, I'm literally transcribing the conversations and analyzing every sentence. So I did 75 pages of that last weekend. It's fascinating. And it is, it's not just the scope and sequence of the events that are occurring in our ELA instruction at the high school. It's the professional development that people need to know what to do when students don't know how to read, but get to high school. And then it's also the professional development around different modalities. They're all doing really great things in their own, it's cool. So I don't want to say too much because I'm supposed to be confidential, but I'm just saying that the interviews.
On camera.
Yeah, well, it's okay. No, I mean, I can't get into too much detail yet, but once the. Wise guy.
Sorry, I had to.
Just say, yeah, no, I mean, I can't get into too much because it's confidential at this point, but there'll be I'm writing a massive paper about it, so there'll be a point where it all comes out. I guess what I would say is that, it's one thing to address the scope and sequence and the expectations of a curriculum. It's another thing to address the instructional practices
Yeah,
that
correct.
are used to implement that. And I got a social studies teacher, came to one of the groups to talk, so that there's a mix. Because I am thinking about social studies and ELA, the skills need to be shared. So once we get through the scope and sequence piece, there's an instructional component that's even bigger.
And I would add, reading is something that is done in science and social studies
Absolutely.
and math.
And math.
They are teachers of reading. Every person is a teacher of reading.
Can I just do a quick time check because
I know
we
you
have
guys have to go.
an important meeting at 6.
In case anybody has to use, yeah. Do
53. Okay, I'm just checking like how we're doing on time overall.
you have a meeting at 6? Yes.
Yeah.
That was just an overview. Please look this over if you'd like anything changed, or if you think, based on our discussions last time, what, financially we can manage in certain years versus others. Just let me know your thoughts, and this is just a proposal, a draft.
My
Just
thought is
looking at-
what we need to handle. If it's gonna improve the curriculum, and it's gonna have an impact, in my mind, biggest issue that we face is math and science, and math and English, well, the core subjects, math,
Yeah.
English, science, and social studies. We have to improve them.
Mhm.
So if you can handle getting them through, I'll support a rigorous program, not just any program.
Yeah, no, your
Rigorous
support, yeah.
program.
Well, look, don't forget too, though, we've got a lot of changes, so we've got some, I just say this quickly. It's not just Christine.
I know.
So she's gonna kind of coordinate it, but we've got Jen and Nicole. Nicole has a curriculum role at the high school and she's getting used to her new job and she's doing a fantastic job. She'll start taking over some of the curriculum pieces at the high school. And then on top of that, we have the ELA coordinator and Donna working at the math at the lower levels. So there's a
K-5.
group of people doing different things. And I think that once we can focus on this, we're gonna see motion very quickly.
But I would also
Right.
add that I'm going to be involving more of the building administrators.
building
in all
principals
of
too.
these processes, the building principals, the assistant principals, Heidi, maybe not Bob, but looking at and training them on pieces of this. So everyone, when they're sitting in PLCs, can have those meaningful discussions, so we're all on the same page. So it's not just an island of curriculum, it's the administrators are talking about curriculum and instruction.
I view Christine's
And
role as
assessment.
the curriculum, the director of teaching and learning, not the sole owner, manager. We're going to go through the strategic plan and assign certain things to people. Matt Malilla has skills. He needs to lead in that area and help.
We do have to look at the strategic plan, because a lot of who's assigned to which roles are no longer.
No, we need to do that soon.
Accurate, and some of the people the roles aren't even here anymore, so.
It's a living document. It's time to.
I just got to print it out so I can start doing that.
Thank you, Jamie. Good.
I'm not shocked.
No, I appreciate your help, Jamie. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we have to move along here. And not forgetting about public comment, but.
Skip it.
Okay.
Yeah, just go.
So our next meeting on December 14th sounds like it's pretty packed. You're gonna have a pie, you're gonna.
What we can do is this, if you'd like, we can do the testing of MIWA and have a very large discussion about MIWA and have some Fountas and Pinnell and some of our localized district data. And then we can, if you wanted to, we could put off the programs and their review until January if it's too packed. It's up to you folks. I would just need to let the teachers know.
I certainly want would like the data, the assessment data. sooner rather than later, so I definitely think we should have that next meeting. Are you going to be ready with your, the literacy curricula that you would like us to review?
Yes, they will.
What's gonna help
be
you the
ready, yes.
most next?
Yeah.
So, well, they piggyback off each other.
I know.
What we're finding in NEWA, and I wish the cameras were on, but I can say that we have a very serious problem with some of the instruction of literacy, some of it at the elementary level, because they're getting to middle school and we're seeing problems and gaps in fluency, decoding. It's alarming. So we need to make sure that we get in front of this now, because those are the foundational years. They're learning to read, not reading to learn. It shifts over once you get to the middle school. So,
How about if we collaborate and we'll get in touch with you?
yeah,
You gotta go to
I'm
this
torn
other-
with what to
Yeah.
do, because they're kind of
Why don't
piggyback.
Christine and I will talk.
Tell me
If you can make
why
the
we need that.
space.
Yeah.
To do them both.
I just don't want to do either one half. I want to do them well.
Yeah, and they've been working hard on preparing things for you. They have like a whole literacy rope, like demonstration on how.
All right, then we have to have them
them
present that.
together.
I'll try to move
And
the
then
other one.
Honestly, any information that we can get ahead of time to pre-review
Yes,
would just make the conversations
Sure.
go faster.
we absolutely can give you that, and then we just had some of the stuff delivered.
Yeah,
Let's
Kind
plan
of
to meet you
exciting.
and I and
Karen,
Karen will.
we can do that.
Who's in the meeting before? It's Maura, you, so we can't, okay, I was trying to think if I could have them meet in a separate space, but it won't work because it's too
I
late.
mean, it's a quorum.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll talk. I'll call you.
That, I would not object
Yeah.
to that.
To not hold them up.
4:30, to us starting at 4:30 and they can.
Yeah.
yeah, as long as they've got two.
Yeah.
They can have it.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that this rich work is done carefully and well,
me too.
and that there's time to
Yeah.
talk about it, because there's a difference between benchmarking and annual growth. And I want to teach people about that.
Right.
Right? Benchmarking is that you meet the expectation of that year. Annual growth means that you've learned more than a year or a year's growth of information in a year. We'll talk about it next
Well,
time.
and if we can get
Okay.
it, the benefit
We're
is everybody gets some
adjourned.
time off.